Have you ever, like, introduced your partner to your coworkers?
Oh, it is always so stressful.
Right. There's always that tiny underlying thrum of anxiety. I mean, you spend your entire adult life carefully curating these two completely separate worlds.
Yeah, you really do.
You have your professional self, right? The one who answers emails promptly and, navigates office politics. And then you have your personal self, the one who leaves socks on the floor and vents about their day.
And you just desperately hope they don't clash.
Exactly. When those two worlds meet, you're just hoping everyone gets along over, like, awkward small talk and appetizers. But imagine if your perfectly constructed present violently collides with a ghost from your partner's carefully buried past.
Which is pretty much the ultimate nightmare scenario for compartmentalization.
It really is.
We rely on the physical boundaries of our lives to keep our emotional boundaries intact. So when those collapse, you aren't just dealing with the people in the room.
Right, you're dealing with all their baggage, too.
Yeah, you are suddenly navigating decades of unresolved history, completely out of context and in literally the worst possible environment.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a deeply personal firsthand account we received from a listener. And the mission today is to explore the incredibly fragile boundary between, well, personal trauma and professional stability.
It's such an intense story.
It really is. It is a story about a past grievance detonating in the present day and the impossible choices that follow. So, to truly grasp the weight of this collision, I want you to put yourself in our narrator's shoes.
Okay, let's set the scene.
This is about 2 years before the explosion. Picture a quiet, sunlit coffee shop in Austin, Texas. That is where she meets Ethan. And by all accounts, Ethan is just the absolute dream.
Oh, he was totally the ideal counterbalance for her. The source material notes that she had spent her 20s navigating this string of very loud, chaotic, emotionally exhausting relationships.
We've all been there.
Right. So when Ethan sits across from her, he's just a revelation. He's calm. He's thoughtful.
And he actually listens.
Exactly. He listens significantly more than he speaks. He doesn't just offer romance. He offers psychological safety.
He feels like someone who has already put in the hard work on himself. And, he's open with her, too. He shares bits and pieces of his history early on.
Which builds so much trust.
Yeah. He tells her that high school was a really dark time. He admits he was targeted, severely bullied, and that it took a massive toll on his confidence. But the key here is that he presents this pain as a completely closed chapter.
Yes, that is so crucial.
He frames it as the crucible that forged him into the steady, empathetic man sitting in that coffee shop.
Which is a really common way we narrativize our own trauma when we want to believe we're past it. We sort of turn it into an origin story.
Oh, wow. An origin story. I like that.
Yeah, because he carried himself with this quiet adult strength. And the narrator completely buys in. I mean, they build a beautiful life together over the next 2 years.
They really do. They have comforting routines. They plan for the future. He helps her prep for interviews. He is basically her rock.
But there is a hidden vulnerability there.
Right. It's like, okay, think of it like buying a beautiful, recently renovated house.
Okay, I'm with you.
You walk into the living room, the walls are freshly painted, everything looks pristine and structurally sound. You would never know there was once a massive hole in the drywall.
Because the surface looks perfect.
Exactly. But underneath that fresh paint, the structural damage to the studs was never actually repaired. I mean, it's fine for everyday living. But if you try to hang a heavy mirror on that exact wrong, compromised spot,
The whole wall is going down.
the entire wall comes crashing down.
That is a perfect analogy. The surface was flawless, but the load-bearing capacity for that specific past trauma was virtually non-existent. He had buried the pain, but he hadn't metabolized it.
So how does the hammer finally hit that compromised stud? Well, it actually starts with a huge win.
A great career move, right?
Yeah. The narrator lands this fantastic new job at a downtown marketing firm. Ethan is thrilled. He's celebrating her, hyping her up, and at this new firm, she gets assigned to a team lead named Mark.
And Mark, according to the source, is the gold standard for a coworker.
Totally.
He trains her patiently, he shows her the ropes, and he actively makes sure she isn't overwhelmed by the onboarding process.
He's just a good guy to work with.
Yeah, he is professional, approachable, and he quickly becomes a steady workplace friend.
And, when you have a good day at work, you naturally talk about it at home. So the narrator mentions Mark's name casually over dinner. She talks about a project they're working on or like a joke he made in the break room. Just standard end of the day chatter.
And here is the fascinating psychological blind spot in the narrative.
Mm.
Ethan hears the name Mark. He hears about his girlfriend's new boss, and he has absolutely zero reaction.
None at all.
His heart rate doesn't spike, his mood doesn't shift. Because human memory, especially traumatic memory, relies really heavily on sensory context.
Wait, sensory context, like what you see and hear.
Exactly. The name Mark just floating in the safety of his own kitchen doesn't connect to the visceral terror of his high school hallway.
Until the sensory context changes.
Right.
Because a few months in, Ethan decides to surprise her. He visits the marketing firm, he walks off the elevator, steps onto the floor, and he sees Mark.
The collision.
Okay, let's unpack this. The narrator writes that before she could even say hello, Ethan just stops dead. He points straight at her team lead and yells across the open plan office.
Which is already so jarring for an office.
Yeah, he yells, "You think I wouldn't recognize you after everything you did to me?"
What's fascinating here is the atmospheric shift in that room. You have two men having completely different neurological experiences in the exact same moment.
It's like they're in two different realities.
Exactly. Mark is standing there holding a coffee mug, visibly blindsided. He's entirely rooted in the present day, genuinely confused, telling Ethan he must have the wrong person.
But he's somewhere else entirely.
Ethan undergoes a terrifying physical transformation. The narrator describes his shoulders locking up, his hands balling into fists, his face just completely draining of color.
It's like the quiet, thoughtful guy from the coffee shop just evaporated into thin air. So what is actually happening in his brain in that split second?
He is experiencing a textbook amygdala hijack.
Oh, I've heard of that. That's the fight or flight thing, right?
Spot on. When someone with unresolved trauma encounters a severe trigger, in this case, the literal physical face of his childhood tormentor, the brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, basically sounds a 5-alarm fire.
So his body's just reacting on instinct.
Yeah, it floods the body with stress hormones, but more importantly, it essentially unplugs the prefrontal cortex.
Which is the logical adult part of the brain.
Exactly, the executive function. The part of the brain that says, I am a 30-year-old man, I am in a professional office building, there are consequences to my actions. That part goes completely offline. Time just collapses. Neurologically speaking, Ethan is no longer a grown man visiting his girlfriend. He's a terrified, humiliated 15-year-old boy backed into a locker, fighting for his survival.
That is so intense. And while this internal time travel is happening for Ethan, the reality of the office is completely freezing. I mean, the typing stops. Dozens of coworkers are just staring.
Everyone is watching this happen.
And the narrator is standing right in the epicenter of the blast. She is watching her safe, personal haven and her hard-earned professional livelihood actively destroy each other.
She is forced into an impossible role here. She is the only bridge between a man reliving his darkest trauma and an office environment that only sees, frankly, an unhinged intruder.
So she tries to de-escalate. She steps in, places a hand on Ethan's arm to ground him, lowers her voice and tells him this isn't the place.
But he rejects that entirely.
Yeah, he just violently shrugs her off. He snaps at her, saying she has no idea what Mark did to him. And he starts aggressively listing these horrific, deeply emotional incidents of cruelty from over a decade ago.
And Mark's response to all of this is perhaps the most devastating thing Ethan could possibly hear in that moment. Mark says, "I'm sorry if you went through that, but I honestly don't remember you."
Which Ethan immediately interprets as a lie, like a cowardly way to dodge accountability.
Because to a victim of severe bullying, the idea that the aggressor doesn't even remember the events is psychologically crushing.
It's that old proverb, right?
Yeah, the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. Ethan has carried the agonizing weight of these memories every single day. So Mark's admission of amnesia feels like a secondary violation. It completely invalidates Ethan's entire lived reality.
Okay, I have to jump in and play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
As I was reading the source material, a huge part of me was screaming at the narrator. Her partner is standing there, bleeding out emotionally. He is facing the guy who terrorized him. Shouldn't she have his back?
It's a really tough question.
I mean, isn't that what love is? You stand by your person, especially when they are exposing their deepest wounds, regardless of where you are. Why isn't she fiercely defending him?
It is the absolute core dilemma of this whole story. And to her credit, the narrator wrestles violently with that exact guilt. She writes about feeling a profound, agonizing sympathy for the teenage boy Ethan used to be.
But the adult reality is different.
Yes. Empathy doesn't blind her to the present reality. She looks around the room, her manager has stepped out to intervene, people are whispering about calling security.
It's rapidly turning into a massive liability.
It is crossing a dangerous, tangible line.
Yeah.
We often romanticize blind loyalty, right? But ambushing someone aggressively in their place of work isn't just about Ethan getting closure. It is an act of destruction.
He's burning it all down.
He is actively jeopardizing Mark's safety, his own freedom, and his partner's livelihood. The narrator realizes in a fraction of a second that she cannot let a ghost from 15 years ago destroy her actual life today.
So the manager formally asks Ethan to leave the premises, and Ethan looks back at the narrator, fully expecting her to walk out that door with him. He wants that blind, romantic loyalty.
But she doesn't go.
She makes a choice. She stays at her desk.
Which is a logistical choice that fractures their entire ideological foundation. By staying, she drew a boundary. She decided the past does not get veto power over the present.
But of course, the workday ends, and she has to face the music. She walks out to the parking lot, and Ethan is waiting. The argument that follows is intense.
He feels completely abandoned.
Yeah, Ethan is furious, feeling completely betrayed. He accuses her of choosing a paycheck over his trauma.
And she holds her ground. She delivers a terribly harsh but necessary truth. She tells him that he is an adult, and he cannot let a high school bully dictate how he behaves in the real world.
Which finally breaks the dam. Ethan completely shatters. He opens up about the bullying in agonizing detail.
The stuff he had kept hidden.
Exactly, the isolation, the profound humiliation, the way it permanently warped his self-esteem. And the narrator says her heart just ached for him. She validates his pain entirely. She tells him no one should ever have to carry that.
It is a moment of intense vulnerability between them, but it is immediately overshadowed by their fundamental disagreement on what to do with that vulnerability.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She gently suggests that maybe he needs professional help. She brings up therapy, framing it as a supportive tool to finally unpack this incredibly heavy burden he's been lugging around.
A very reasonable suggestion.
You would think. But Ethan's reaction, he treats the suggestion like she just slapped him. He takes it as a direct insult, accusing her of saying he is broken or that something is wrong with him.
Let's look at the psychology of why that suggestion backfired so spectacularly. For Ethan, his identity as a survivor of this specific trauma had become a protective shield.
Yeah, it was who he was.
Right. When you build your entire worldview around being the injured party, any suggestion to heal the injury feels like an attempt to disarm you. He viewed her push for therapy not as an offer of help, but as a lack of solidarity.
Oh, I see. He wanted her to be angry with him, not to try and fix him.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the narrator has a profound realization here. Growth doesn't require you to pretend the fire never happened, but it does require you to stop bringing the matches into your current home.
That's a great way to put it.
Ethan felt completely justified in his explosion because of his past pain. He lacked the capacity to see the collateral damage he was causing in the present.
He was completely trapped in the past. Which brings us to the most fascinating and honestly the quietest revelation of this whole saga.
The aftermath at the office.
Right. A few days go by. The workplace settles into a very tense, uneasy normal. HR gets involved just enough to document the incident, but mercifully decides not to escalate it or fire anyone.
But the elephant is still sitting right in the middle of the marketing department.
Totally. Until Mark approaches the narrator privately. And this conversation completely floored me. Because Mark doesn't get defensive.
He doesn't try to make excuses.
No, he doesn't try to justify high school. He doesn't claim he was an angel back then. And he certainly doesn't accuse Ethan of being crazy.
So what does he actually do?
He sincerely looks her in the eye and reiterates what he said during the explosion. He genuinely, truly does not remember Ethan. He tells her that high school is a long time ago, he's a different person, and the memories are they're just gone.
The narrator notes that his sincerity was absolutely undeniable in that moment. And this brings up a wild phenomenon in memory science regarding bullying.
Oh, I want to hear about this.
So, the human brain prioritizes storing memories attached to high emotional arousal. For Ethan, every taunt was a life-or-death spike of cortisol. The memories were burned into his hippocampus with agonizing clarity.
Because he was terrified.
Exactly. But for Mark, picking on a kid in the hallway might have just been a Tuesday. There was no emotional spike for him, so his brain simply discarded the data.
Wow. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. And the narrator sees this incredible contrast. Mark, flawed as he might have been in his youth, has moved forward. He is an adult living in the present day.
While Ethan is still functionally 15 years old, carrying a mountain of crushing weight.
It really crystallizes the difference between living a life and endlessly reliving a nightmare.
It's tragic, honestly.
So the narrator goes home and carefully shares this conversation with Ethan. She hopes that hearing Mark isn't the same monster he remembers might offer some, I don't know, weird sliver of peace.
But it doesn't.
It is the ultimate deal breaker.
Because Ethan cannot process it. He immediately accuses her of defending his abuser.
Which leaves her with absolutely nowhere to go. If she pushes back, she's an enemy. If she stays, she is just enabling him. And the breakup that follows is incredibly telling about her character.
How so?
Well, it wasn't a dramatic, screaming match throwing plates at the wall. It was quiet. It was firm.
It was born of absolute clarity. She saw the road ahead, and she chose an exit.
Yeah, she sits him down and explains it as cleanly as possible. She cannot stay in a partnership where the past holds the present hostage.
Which is a very fair boundary.
Right. She refuses to live on eggshells, constantly wondering what random encounter might trigger a public explosion. And above all, she cannot tether her life to someone who views her encouragement to grow as an act of betrayal.
She chooses her own well-being.
She chooses her job. She chooses her stability. She chooses herself.
It is a devastatingly sad outcome, but from a psychological standpoint, it is incredibly healthy. She recognized her own limits. She realized that you cannot love someone into healing if they refuse to even look at the wound.
So what does this all mean? When you look at the arc of this story, from the quiet coffee shop to the explosive office to the final, firm goodbye to massive lessons stand out.
Let's hear them.
First, empathy does not require self-immolation. You can deeply, genuinely understand someone's pain. You can validate their trauma without allowing their destructive reaction to that trauma to nuke your own life.
Empathy is standing next to someone in the dark. It is not letting them drag you into the abyss with them. Establishing a boundary doesn't mean you don't care. It means you recognize that your safety and stability are not acceptable collateral damage for their healing journey.
Exactly. And the second takeaway is equally critical. You cannot be a mirror of growth for someone who refuses to open their eyes.
That is so true.
The narrator tried to reflect Ethan's adult strength back to him. She tried to show him he was safe now, that he wasn't that helpless kid anymore. But because he hadn't internalized that growth himself, the reflection was totally meaningless to him.
It is the real tragedy of unresolved trauma. It builds a cage out of your own history, and it locks you inside. And until you are willing to examine the bars, no one from the outside can pull you free.
It is a profound, incredibly tough lesson in personal responsibility. As you listen to this, I really want you to think about the dynamics in your own life. How do you balance supporting the people you love when they are hurting, while fiercely protecting the peace and stability you've worked so hard to build?
Where is the line between being supportive and being an enabler?
It requires constant vigilance.
It really does. You have to continually evaluate where their unresolved history ends and your required boundaries begin.
It is one of the hardest tightropes we ever have to walk. And as we wrap up today's deep dive into this incredible source material, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to mull over. Something that builds on the absolute hardest, most bitter pill of this entire narrative.
The memory aspect.
Yes. Think about the moment Mark admitted he didn't remember. When someone who caused you deep, life-altering pain genuinely has no memory of you at all, is it possible to find true closure? Or does the fact that they simply forgot make your own healing process infinitely harder to complete?